All right, guys, let's get started on page 268 in the book. We ended last week talking about fasting, and we're going to continue with how not to fast. Let's see, on page 268, we're at Matthew chapter 6, verses 16 to 18. Would anyone like to read that passage?
I'll do it.
Thank you.
When you fast, don't put on a sad face as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces so that all men may see that they are fasting. This is the truth I tell you. They are paid in full. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, so that to men you may not look as if you are fasting, but to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees what happens in secret will give you your reward in full.
I don't know anyone who fasts on a regular basis, but it says right under that verse in the book, to this day, fasting is an essential part of religious life in the Middle East. So I assume that means Muslims and Jews. It says the Jewish fasting customs are exactly the same as the Muslim customs. It says for Jews in the time of Christ, there was only one compulsory fast, and that was the Day of Atonement. And just a quick review of Jewish holidays. Rosh Hashanah is the Jewish New Year, where they blow the shofar, the ram's horn. And then they have 10 days of penitence where they pray and they're sorry and all of that. And then at the end of the 10 days is the Day of Atonement, which is Yom Kippur. And on Yom Kippur is the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. They have to go to synagogue, they pray most of the day, and that's the day they fast. And that is their holiest day of the year. Anyone want to comment on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? It comes up in September.
Well, they still do that to this day. So that's, the fast is, there are a lot of cranky people on that day.
Oh dear. Well, and isn't that biblical? I think that is in the Bible, that they have to do it the minimum that one day. And some choose to do it more. Barclay says that Jews made a great private use of private fasting. I'm on 269. It says some Jews fast, and I think he means back in the day. Fasting was connected with mourning. You could fast because you were very, very sad. I think sometimes that happens anyway because you just don't feel like eating. Jews fasted to make amends for sin. They saw no value in fasting apart from repentance. Fasting could be an act of national penitence. We're all going to fast so that God will answer our prayer. Sometimes fasting was a preparation for revelation. We're all going to fast so God will reveal what we're supposed to do to us. And then Barclay gives some examples of Moses fasting, Daniel fasting while he waited God's word. Jesus, we know, fasted before the temptation for 40 days. I don't know how you fast for 40 days. I couldn't fast 4 hours, but
well, somewhere in here, I think I remember, and this is certainly the case with Ramadan, you fast for an extended period of time during the day, but you don't fast for 24 hours.
Right, yeah.
So from sunrise to sunset. So during Ramadan, you get up before sunrise
and
eat. And then in the evening, a lot of folks go to the mosque for the evening meal to break that day's fast for prayers and a meal.
And that's a whole 30-day month. That's a month of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm actually, for health reasons, doing what's called intermittent fasting. And I only eat within an 8-hour window every day.
Yeah. They say if you do the 12-hour fast from, say, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., it really it's good for you.
Yeah, I started there, and I'm actually doing 16 hours a day.
Wow, that is good.
I know from talking with Satina and Abdi, mostly Abdi, um, during Ramadan, most folks lose some weight. He said, and I said, well, so does everybody do it? He says, well, if you gain weight during Ramadan, no. So, no, I think it's like a lot of religious customs and a lot of different faiths, there are varying degrees. So
And
they're very, I can remember a couple years ago when I was subbing in the different schools and talking with an Islamic child. He was like 8 or 9, maybe 10. But anyhow, Ramadan was getting ready to start, or had just started, one or the other. And he was so excited. He was like, this year, I get to do it. Oh, and so it really was a real honor for him. I get to participate in this.
yeah, that's like washing the car and cutting grass. It's fun until kids realize it's work. It ain't
Well, but from talking with Satina and Abdi, they, it didn't slow down their lives. Ahmed was fasting, but still went to soccer practice in the month of May every day.
I think it's interesting that the 7 years they spent in Nairobi in Kenya, the Kenyan government would educate them through middle school, but they got that religious education regardless. They got that all along.
Right.
It was very important that they got their Arabic and Muslim training, but not so much the math and science and history.
Well, that varied between the two boys.
Well, that's true. That's true. But Abdi considers himself the man of the family, and Ahmed is the playboy. So, that structure was set up early along. Ahmed knew, being second son, he wasn't going to be the man of the family. So Abdi takes that very seriously.
Yes, and he still does.
Yes, he does. Yeah. I just talked to him last week. He called me last week.
That he did. Yeah. I told him the other night. Yeah.
Barclay says another time you can fast, or that Jews can fast, and some Christians do too, is an appeal to God when you're asking for some special favor or attention, or he gives the example of rain or a good harvest or whatever. In Jewish fasting, there were really 3 main ideas in people's minds when they did it. Fasting was a deliberate attempt to draw attention of God to the person who fasted. So you wanted special attention from God for whatever your request was. A second main idea in people's minds when they were fasting was a deliberate attempt to prove that penitence was real. If I'm truly, truly penitent, God will grant me my request. And a great deal of fasting was vicarious. It was done on behalf of other people. Like lots of people, I'm sure, in the United States were praying and fasting for the Jews during the Holocaust, and just other times through history, you do it for other people. Any thoughts about fasting to draw attention from God, to prove that your penitence is real, and doing it actually for other people, on behalf of other people?
I didn't know that. So that puts a different meaning to it.
Yeah. I would have a hard time fasting for myself, much less for other people. I'm pretty devoted to food.
Yeah, because I had, thought of it before as a way to kind of clear your soul and body to experience the presence of God.
I think I think I've heard Shay say she fasts 1 day a week.
She did. Yeah, that was for diet.
Yeah, that's a different version, because that's really why I'm doing what I lost 10 pounds in the pandemic. It took 6 months, but the intermittent fasting that you hear about today is usually for weight control. And so you can either do like I do, and I fast for 16 hours every day because I like having a schedule, or you can do it 2 days a week, not consecutive, and severely limit your caloric intake. And that's what Shay does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she told me that first year of retirement was a surprise.
Yeah, I did that too. But somebody that I know that has fasted years ago for religious reasons, and some of y'all may have to help me, is Jamie McDonald. When she was younger, apparently she did it fairly frequently.
Oh, I've never heard that story.
Yeah, and it's been a long time since she told me, so I don't remember any specifics, but she would be an interesting person to talk to about religious fasting.
What about sugar, maintaining sugar levels or, you know?
Yeah, that's what I would have trouble with.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
like I said, at least in terms of, you know, what the Bible is saying, it's not all day. You know, you do get to eat for a certain period, and, you know, I guess you figure out if you've got medical reasons, you can be excused.
Yeah, that's true in Judaism as well. Pregnant women were excused. Elderly could be excused if they had medical conditions. I didn't mention those, but in here it says somewhere groups of people were excused.
Do I remember that nurses was in that group? If you were,
I don't remember, but it's in if you have the book, it's in there somewhere where for various reasons, groups are excused.
yeah. So I would think if you had a medical condition like diabetes, that would be a real good reason to not do it.
Or you could still fast from solid food and put the nutrients you need in a liquid drink and drink it.
Right.
Yeah, so you could still honor the fast. On page 271, he continues with how not to fast. There are certain inevitable dangers, of course, when people fast, because you can do it for show, for attention, to get brownie points, as it were, with God, if you think that's something you can do. So he talks about some of the people back in Jesus's day would try to show their superior piety. It was a deliberate demonstration, not to honor God, but to make a big show in front of people and to show how devoted and disciplined they were. And then it talks about they had Jewish days of fasting, Monday and Thursday. And I've never heard that before, that the most number of people would fast on Monday and Thursday. And that's probably
well, I thought that was funny, and I didn't kind of read that as you might have, but I thought that he was saying that because Monday and those days were market days,
right,
and that a lot of people were in town, that people tended to fast on those days, so they'd have a bigger audience.
That is right. It was in there. Yeah.
Fasting. So it's like they would paint their faces pale and wear dirty clothes and
not comb their hair.
And
yeah.
So fast. I mean, when I think fasting, you know, I walk around and I'm fasting. Nobody's gonna look at me and tell. Right. So I think it included more than just not eating. Because I saw somewhere you weren't supposed to smell perfume. So you
weren't supposed to wash.
Yeah. Right. So it was more than just not food. So, you know, today we fast and nobody knows.
Right.
It seems like in some ways it's if you think about it in another way, it's just a form of discipline. Right. So whether you're fasting or you say I'm going to go to church every Sunday or I'm going to do some particular thing to be mindful of God and my blessings and whatever, it's just a form of discipline.
Yeah, like praying or reading the Bible every day.
Right. I mean, like in monasteries, and I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I think it's almost like a naval change of watch or something. They ring a bell every so often or something and have certain prayer times and so forth.
Yeah. 7 times a day, right, Kathy?
Mm-hmm.
When we go to the Holy Cross Abbey.
Those in the Trappist tradition. Yeah.
7 times a day. But I think that was established by the Catholic Church, wasn't it, Kathy?
Is it back in the 1100?
Yeah, it's not in the Bible, right?
Oh no.
Yeah, it's
not
just
that I know of. No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I've never seen it.
Yeah.
No.
So at the bottom of 271, Barclay says many people who took deliberate steps so that others could not miss the fact that they were fasting, like Susan said, they would wear dirty clothes and muss their hair and paint their face pale, and just to make everybody know that they were real penitent and really sacrificing. which of course you get no points for, because anything you do where you get notoriety from man on earth, you get no points from God because you've already gotten your reward here on earth. So he said for them, it was a deliberate act of spiritual pride and ostentation. And rabbis were very clear that fasting for its own sake was valueless. And that's at the top of 272.
When I was in high school, the associate minister that led the youth group, he proposed that those of us who wanted to would fast over the Easter weekend, over Holy Week, from Good Friday to Easter morning. And so I decided I would give that a try. So, and then my mother spent all day Saturday cooking for Easter dinner, including, this family recipe for rolls that we all still love. And I was like, I can't eat it. And my mother's like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this?
Did you make it to Sunday morning?
I don't think I did. I think I snuck a roll.
Well, I was thinking in this conversation, the emphasis in some ways is on food. So to honor God, you deny yourself food. And then on the other hand, you have an Easter feast and you pig out, and you honor God by pigging out. So it's something about food.
Yep.
It's a requirement.
Yeah. Now it's snowing.
Oh, it's snowing. It's been snowing here to beat the bands.
Oh, wow. The ground's white here now.
No, we've got snow intermixed with rain and nothing sticking.
Oh, no, I'm hitting close to, there's almost an inch on the table on the deck.
Wow. I hadn't even noticed. Wow, in 30 minutes, it's done a lot here. At the bottom of 273, he talks about true fasting. Jesus's words imply that there is a wise type of fasting in which he expected Christians would take part. On 273, it says fasting is good for your health, and we've talked about that. And this is a real zinger for me, and Michael may make no comment here. It says we are supposed to some people live to eat instead of eating to live. And I have heard that mantra before. Thank you for only smiling, dear. I adore going out to eat. I love trying different foods. So that was a direct aim at me.
In our Miata Club, our motto is we drive to eat and we eat to drive.
I love that.
When I was very young, still living in Danville, the minister's wife, and there's a medical term for it that I don't know, had no sense of taste and smell.
Oh.
So eating gave her no pleasure. She was skinny as a rail because she literally ate only to stay alive.
Oh my gosh.
I grew up with someone who had that, yes.
Food is a great pleasure in life.
Yeah,
All
exactly.
the seasonings of the different cultures.
Yeah,
Wow.
and she couldn't taste a thing or smell it.
Oh. In this section, true fasting, it says fasting is good for self-discipline. So that's to Bud's point. Fasting preserves us from becoming the slaves of a habit. And I have found myself to be a slave of multiple habits, most of which I enjoy, like devotions, food, reading the paper. I mean, just reading in general. I mean, I'll be sick laying in the bed, but I'm going to read that daily paper. It's just ridiculous. Number 4, fasting preserves the ability to do without things. And I think some people do that during Lent, chocolate or what have you. Though I have never done without, I've never given up anything for Lent because I grew up Methodist and we didn't do it. Does anyone who has done that find value in that?
Oh, I have giving stuff
yeah.
up for Lent.
Yeah.
Because especially if you give up something that you do routinely, because it reminds you this is Lent. And it keeps it very, very close in the front of your mind. I've given up drinking for Lent. And, you know, when you're on the staff inspection teams and everybody's going out for a toddy in the evening, you remember it's Lent. One that I found the most effective, though, and y'all know that I have occasionally expressed my colorful vocabulary. One of the things that I have given up for Lent is cussing and fussing.
Huh,
And I found that to be very, very helpful.
huh.
Really?
Yeah.
Did it continue, knowing you as well as I do, did it continue after Lent?
Actually, somewhat it did. It did. And I'm going to try that particular one again this year because I already gave up drinking for New Year's. So I think I'm going to try the cussing and fussing again.
We're working on watching our voices around, because we grew up in the country, and if you hit your thumb with a hammer, you're not saying garden peas.
Yeah.
Around the twins, the 4 grandkids, we need to not be doing that, and we catch ourselves. So we're getting better.
The year that I gave up listening to the radio, I was still working in Louisa, so I had the 2-hour daily commute. So spending that much time in silence each day was good. It was tough at first. But it was good.
I think what most people are sort of addicted to now is the screen, you know, whether it's the tablet or the computer or the phone. I mean, you
Right.
just track how much time a day you spend in front of a screen, and it is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Well, I know I'm doing too much when I'm behind on my papers. I'm reading, I think, Friday's paper right now.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to read them because I pay for them. I'm too cheap not to get them and not read them. So I'll read them this afternoon and catch up. But yeah, I know I'm on it too much when I'm not reading my papers. Barkley says,
Just give me a morning briefing of the 5 important items so I don't have to read all that junk.
well, I tell you, Bud, I don't read the stuff about COVID and the politics. I read the little blurbs that aren't on the news, the little interesting things.
Yeah, I try to catch those.
Well, we're getting off topic here, but I'll be real quick. But I grew up in a small town, and the deal was if you had Kitten and Michael over for dinner, you write a little blurb and put it in the paper. You know.
Yes, my hometown paper did that too. Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. William Deal entertained Mr. and Mrs. Michael Whitlow, and they served chicken cacciatore. You know, it was ridiculous.
Well, the Louisa paper still was doing that as recent as about 5 years ago, and it only stopped because the woman who was doing it died.
Yep, that's when it stopped. Yeah, I still get the Brunswick Times Dispatch from Lawrenceville, and that's exactly when it stopped, when the lady died. Thank you, Bud. That was sweet. Barkley says, let's see, fasting preserves the ability to do without things. A number of things that we have come to regard as essential really aren't, and you learn that, like Nancy said, by doing without them. We are all at the mercy of the luxuries of life. I remember 40 years ago when I thought about 50 years ago, what would I have when I was a grown-up? You know, all these things. Oh my gosh, I have so many more things than I ever thought I would have. And, you know, I remember when we lived in an apartment and there was no dishwasher, no microwave, nothing that we now think of as essential.
Well, I learned that lesson as a young adult. I got married the first time at the ripe old age of 19, and my father said, I'm not responsible for you anymore. And my husband was number 3 of 7 kids. So there was no money coming from parents. And he was in college and I was supporting us as a secretary. And for entertainment, we would go wander through the mall and I'd look at all this stuff and want it all because I couldn't have it. And then he graduated and we got jobs and had plenty of money. And I'd go shopping and I'd say, oh, I don't want that. And I bought some things because I had to furnish the house, but I realized I really didn't want as much as I thought I wanted. I just wanted the ability.
Yeah.
And that helped carry me through. When we got a divorce, I went back to being a starving student. And then I graduated and got a job and then went back to school. So I've been a starving student with no money for 3 times as an adult. But that first lesson made the second 2 episodes easier to bear, because I realized it wasn't that I really wanted this stuff. I just wanted the freedom that money brought. And that actually was a type of discipline. So when I got money, I didn't go crazy and go out and buy everything, although from the looks of my house at some point I must have, because I've got so much stuff, like Kitten says. But I learned at a very early age that I really didn't want as much stuff as I thought I might.
Now we're on the other end of the spectrum. We say we got all this stuff, we got to get
I
rid
want to get rid of it.
of it.
And our
Yeah.
kids don't want it. Like
They don't want it,
when
but-
our parents passed, when mine passed, I mean, my aunt had an auction and I got my grandmother's rocking chair. I sobbed at the auction site that I got there are 23 grandkids in my generation, and we're standing there, half of us bidding against each other. And I got my grandmother's rocking chair, and I was like, that's my prayer chair every morning. And oh my gosh, you can take everything else out of my house and I'll just keep my grandma's rocking chair, because I can put my hands where she put her hands. And I adored her. There's some things that I will never let go of. And then other things, I don't care if you haul it all away. So it's interesting. I don't want nearly as much, Sarah, as I used to.
Yeah.
Just certain things.
Right. Agreed.
When I was reading this part where it was talking about the benefits of fasting, it kind of made me feel like these sound like modern day benefits, like health and these kinds of things. I was wondering in Jesus's time whether that was true, whether these were looked at as benefits, because with the Jewish people and Muslims, it was saying that fasting really had no purpose at all from a religious point of view, other than as penitence, or for a forgiveness of sins, whatever. So when I started reading this list of benefits, it sounded very much more modern to me.
Well, of course, the Muslims wouldn't have started doing it, of course, until the 600s. So they would have been hundreds of years behind the Jews doing it. So.
Well, and I also think there was a difference in back then. If you woke up in the morning and your main concern was to get enough food to eat for the day, and you didn't have stuff. So if you gave up the food for the day, you're giving up everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it was much more meaningful. That's a very good point.
Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point, Claire. All right, so Barclay continues with fasting, preserving the ability to do without things. And then he says fasting makes us appreciate the things we do have all the more. There was a time in life when some pleasure came so seldom that we really enjoyed it when it did come. And what was once a sharp pleasure has become simply a drug, which we cannot do without. And I thought about eating out. I never went out to eat as a kid. So when Michael and I started dating, just going to, Burger King or McDonald's was a big deal, because we never did it. And now we eat out so often, it's not even a big deal anymore. And it sort of lost its zing. Where do you want to eat tonight? Well, I don't know. Where do you want to eat? And 50 years ago, it was such a treasure to eat out.
Oh, when this pandemic is over, I'm going back to that treasure of eating out.
I had to laugh at my parents. You're talking about where do you want to eat? I don't care. Where do you want to eat? I don't care. That argument. When my parents retired, they went down to just one car. And they alternated. They went out to lunch every day. They alternated who drove, and whoever drove chose where they went. And that avoided, that back and forth of not caring.
That's lovely. I like that.
Yeah.
Don't you think Easter and Christmas, maybe even birthday, vacation, movies, eating out, all of these things have lost some of their zing because we so overdo it with them?
Yeah.
I remember when
we
I
are
was a kid.
we are so privileged
Yeah, we are.
You know, we are so privileged, and you know, so with the pandemic and how I've changed my life this past nearly a year now, I realize, you know, it just brings those events back into meaning for me, you know, to have done without them for a year.
Yeah, I remember when Christmas was a big deal as a kid, and we didn't get a lot of gifts. There were 5 of us, so we got things to share, like games and box games and puzzles and things like that. But me as a person, I might get a doll, and then I would get a stocking with, you know, the requisite orange and a handful of nuts and, you know, a handful of plastic
Dates and
wrap
figs.
candy. Yeah.
Dates and figs and the book of lifesavers.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did too. I had got the book.
Yes. Oh, that's funny. So at the bottom of 274, Barclay says, fasting has gone almost completely out of the lives of ordinary people. And as I said at the beginning, I don't know anyone who does it on a regular basis. I knew one person at Midlow High, another assistant principal, who did it occasionally, but he was about 80 or 100 pounds overweight. So I don't think he did it to lose weight. I think he probably did it to focus on for religious purposes, not eating purposes, because he was a heavy man. All right, on page 275, we'll move along to another topic talking about your treasure on earth. Don't build up treasure on earth, build your treasure in heaven. If someone would read chapter 6, 19 to 21.
I'll read it.
Thank you.
Do not lay up for yourselves treasures upon earth where moth and rust destroy them and where thieves dig through and steal. Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy them and where thieves do not dig through and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.
So Jesus says we need to concentrate on things that will last, not things that are temporal or will rust or decay or get eaten away. Jesus calls up 3 pictures from the 3 great sources of wealth in Palestine. At the bottom of 275, he says, he tells people to avoid things that the moth can destroy, like fancy, elaborate clothes, shoes, cloaks, hats, anything fancy that a moth can destroy. Then he says he tells people to avoid things that can rust and destroy. And of course, I was thinking of things like tools and cars and things like that. But the word rust, when you look at it, means to eat away, like mice and rats eat away grain. And of course, in 2000 years ago, of course, they didn't have cars. So it probably referred to don't put your wealth in storing away lots of grain in big silos and puffing up yourself like, I have 3 silos of corn and 2 silos of wheat or whatever, because worms and rats and mice can destroy all that, so you can lose it. And
There's
the
something
third,
also, Kitten, called corn rust.
Mhm.
It's a fungus.
Mhm. Yeah. There's a
Okay.
couple of different fungus.
Now, not that they didn't have corn there, but I'm sure it would
Yeah.
maybe apply to wheat.
yeah.
Right. No, there's different critters that can
Yeah.
wipe out a harvested crop.
And number 3, he says he tells people to avoid treasures which thieves can steal by digging through. And those of you that have the book, I never heard this before, but they lived in literally thin-walled earthen huts that you literally could dig through, like it was like pottery. You could dig through it and steal. Houses weren't substantial like now. You really got to make an effort to break in. It said houses were made of nothing stronger than baked clay. So people literally dug a hole through the clay and came in and stole your stuff, because they didn't have banks. So people might bury silver or gold in a hole in the floor or something like that. Did anyone ever read the book Silas Marner?
Yeah, but I don't remember the details.
George Eliot.
Yeah.
Honey,
Yeah.
a brick by the fireplace.
Do what?
Bud says he thought he had money in a brick under the fireplace or something like that.
Yeah. Well, even until banks really were established, so many people back in colonial days lived so far from a bank, they hid money in random places, under bricks and behind pictures and in a hole in the backyard or something silly. A
Well, my
lot of
grandmother-
Jewish,
My
Do what?
grandmother had Alzheimer's, and when my grandfather died and we had to go bring her up here to live with my parents, she had grown up very poor, and she had hidden money. They found a couple of $1,000s that she'd hidden around her apartment.
yeah, I found $13,000 when I cleaned out Mama's rooms. Yeah.
Wow.
I used to frustrate us because every time we would go home, my dad would say, now, if something happens to me, now you go to this drawer and you push it sideways and you lift this doodad and, and there's a coffee can there, whatever.
Oh, there
Well,
were,
they-
there were a lot of
I can't remember where anything was, so who
Well, if
knows?
you lived through the Depression,
You better write it down.
you didn't trust banks if you lived through the Depression. So I get that.
Well, and during colonial times, there's a lot of antique desks and stuff that had secret compartments,
Yeah.
and houses that had, holes in the floor that, under the rug and that kind of stuff.
Well, even in the late 1990s, as we were getting ready to go into the year 2000, there was a lot of people were hoarding cash because there was fear that the bank's computers would crash. I remember that New Year's Eve, make sure you've got enough food in the pantry, that your cars are fully gassed up, and you've got some cash in case all these computers crash. And of course, the next day, nothing happened.
I remember that. Good point.
And my former sister-in-law stockpiled their house for enough supplies for a whole year. She was sure the world was coming to an end.
But I will tell you that I had a 2000 Honda Civic, and there was never a car engineered that beautifully, because they were so sure that in 2000 the world was going to, the computer system was going to. I had that car for over 16 years. It was a miracle.
Let's see. So Jesus warns people against three kinds of pleasures and possessions. He warns people against pleasures that will wear out, like an old suit of clothes. He warns his disciples against pleasures which can be eroded away, pleasures that inevitably lose their attraction as we grow older, like, the mice and rats gnawing away at the grain. And we realize as we get older, we really need less and less stuff to be happy. And most of us start giving away all our stuff and junk and whatever. Jesus warns against the pleasures that can be stolen, which I guess is mostly money, because I wouldn't care if somebody broke in my house and stole my furniture, except for my grandma's rocking chair. I'll kill you for that.
But your connection to your grandmother's rocking chair isn't because it's the latest style or whatever. It's
No.
because of the emotional connection.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
I think, I've got a couple of pieces that it's the emotional connection. I don't really like them all. Some of them I don't really like, but it's the emotional connection.
Yeah. It's
No.
just an old gooseneck rocking chair. They were very common, very cheap.
Kind of small.
It's-
It's only about 8 inches off the floor.
Yeah,
It's
it's
like,
very low
Yeah.
to the floor.
Yeah.
So I struggled to get out of it. I can't imagine sitting in it 30 more years, but we'll see. If we are wise, we will build our happiness on things which we cannot lose. And I'm sure everybody listening knows that. We're there. We know you don't put your value in anything temporal that you can lose. Anyone whose treasure is in things is bound to lose that treasure. For in things there is no permanence, and no thing lasts forever. And then he switches over into talking about where your treasure should be. So that's where your treasure should not be, that we just finished. Now, where should your treasure be? The Jews were very familiar with the phrase treasure in heaven. They identified such treasure with two things in particular. They said that the deeds of kindness which people did on earth were your treasure in heaven. And I think we would easily agree with that. Both Jesus and the Jewish rabbis were sure that what is selfishly hoarded is lost, but that which is generously given always brings treasure in heaven. And then it talks about the Roman Emperor Decius in 250 AD. And they came in, they broke in a Christian church and were going to steal stuff from Laurentius, the deacon. And they said, where's, the Romans broke in to steal all the stuff from the church. And he said, where's your silver? Where's your gold or whatever? And the deacon Laurentius said, he pointed at the widows and the orphans who were being fed, the sick who were being nursed, the poor whose needs were being supplied, and said, these are the treasures of the church. The church has always believed that what we keep, we lose, and what we spend, we have. So I think we would all agree with that. And then number two, the Jews always connected the phrase treasure in heaven with your character. There's a Spanish proverb, I liked this. There are no pockets in a shroud.
There are no hearses in luggage racks.
Yes.
No hearses have luggage racks.
Yeah. And there's no, there's no U-Haul behind a hearse too. I've heard. Yeah. Jesus ends this section by stating that where a person's treasure is, that person's heart is there also. If all through their lives, their eyes were on eternity, then they will evaluate lightly things of this world. If their thoughts have been directed to the world beyond, they will leave this world with gladness because they go at last to God. Jesus never said this world was unimportant, but that its importance is not in itself, but in that to which it leads. This world is not the end of life. It is a stage on the way. Our eyes ought to be forever fixed on the goal beyond.
You're reminding me of a saying, when I was doing my farmer workshops right before I retired, there was a woman who did one on estate planning and, how to leave your farm to your kids. And she did PowerPoint presentations, and her last PowerPoint slide said, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yeah. If you think about eternity, the Bible says you're only here the blink of an eye. So you think about a blink of an eye and your entire 94 years is done or whatever. And I'm thinking, wow.
All right, what was it? Remember Carl Sagan and the Cosmos series that he did back in the 80s?
Yep.
And the imagery he used in one segment, it was this massive, a calendar, like a month's calendar, but the size of a football field. And I think that was the size of it. And the history of humanity was represented by literally a dot the size of a period at the end of a sentence in the very bottom corner of the calendar.
Yeah, when I taught earth science and we did the geologic timeline, Cenozoic, Mesozoic, all the eras, the amount of time humans have even been in the picture is December 31st, 12:59 and 59 seconds.
Yeah.
1 second of the eternal, 6 billion years or whatever they're saying the earth is now, because that changes, in geologic history. We've been here like a second in time for all the, millions of years people have been here. So
you just hit on the basis of the struggle that I have constantly with religion, particularly faith somewhat. You all who know me and have known me a long time know that this idea of some little village in the Middle East is God's domain and everybody else is out of luck and all that stuff. I'm with that period, and I see that football field. God created everything, and so if you're looking for me in a few years, I'll be in the Pleiades.
Okay.
I didn't realize, Bud, until just a few years ago. I mean, I was always spouting the mantra, and I'm not trying to offend anybody here. You have to be a Christian, you have to be a Christian, you have to be a Christian, because that's what my Bible says. And then I was in a class, and I don't remember who said it. Might have been one of you. Religions are all man-made. God didn't create them. And God is powerful enough that if he wants to reach some man in the mountains of Tibet, he can do it without a Christian Bible. And it's not for us to judge how God reaches people in China and Tibet and India and the Amazon. That's God's business, and we don't need to be judging it, deciding it. I mean, I have plenty of people that if relatives included, if you're not Christian, you're going to hell. And I just simply don't believe that. I think my God's powerful enough to get us all there if we want to be there, however that is.
Manifests himself different ways.
Yes. But I didn't realize that because all I was taught as a child was that you have to be, my grandmother said, not only did you have to be Christian, you had to be Catholic or you were going to hell. Methodists were going to hell. My grandmother told me that when I was 12. I struggled with that for a long time.
Yeah.
So
I think
She's been
humanity.
rocking too much on that rocking chair.
what?
She'd been rocking too much on that rocking chair.
Oh, that's my Methodist grandma. Yeah, my mom's mom from Boston is the one that's Catholic. She's the one that said I was going to hell. My grandma that's Methodist from down here, whose rocking chair I have, she thought I walked on water, honey.
Just say, I'll meet you there.
I mean, I would like my grandmother to come get me when I'm going to heaven. My grandma Abernathy's the one I want to come get me. Not my mom, not my dad. I want my grandma to come. She lived across the field on the farm. It was delightful.
Oh.
Kathy
What?
has a point there. You have a point, Kathy.
Oh, I was going to say, humanity has done so much to limit God.
Yeah.
You know, we tend to see God in our own image, when what we're supposed to be striving for is to be in God's image.
There's a movie that will offend many people and in some ways offends me, but Bill Maher, Religiosity, and it will make you think about religion. And of course, he's an atheist, I think, but it makes you think.
Wasn't Carl Sagan an atheist? Kathy?
Religiosity.
Oh.
He
I
wasn't.
remember when Religiosity came out, and I don't know about Carl Sagan's. I don't know about his religious.
But Kitten, to your point of
He wasn't religious.
about your grandmother coming to get you, whatever.
Yeah.
There was a program that I always enjoyed. It was Seymour Lipton, I think is his name, the Actors Guild. It was a great program where they interviewed various actors and so forth. And they asked 3 questions at the end of the interview, you know, like, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite cuss word or whatever? And if God exists or heaven exists, what do you expect to hear God say? And my answer was, your grandfather's here and he's waiting for you to take you fishing.
Wow. Cool. I like that, Bud. That's a good place. Good place to end.
If you think about the length of time many of us has known each other, the changes maybe not only what we have perceived, but possibly in the person. Like Kitten, you know, I knew the Kitten that was early on that I think was, you know, much stricter, and she's gotten, her corners have been rounded, you know, over a period of time. And different ones of us that we've kind of, over the periods of time, they've gone through changes and we've gone through changes. We've seen different things about each other. I think the community of thought within the group like that is just really dynamic. You know?
I think it's important that we be together as a group. And when we go back to meeting at church and I go back to my class, I'm really going to miss this group. And Bud, just so you know, one of the reasons I decided to stay at Bonaire was because of you. When I was in your class, I found your class to be profound. I just
Well, that's humbling.
Really enjoyed it. You had great things to say, and that was 20 years ago. But I was searching and looking, and we definitely knew we needed to leave Bethany. But we had intended to visit Bonaire Methodist, Bonaire Baptist, and we came to Bonaire Christian because of Jean Turlington. She lived across the street, and you were the reason I decided to stay.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
And I think too, what's interesting is that I, grew up without Jesus, without any knowledge of Jesus. And yet after being at Bonaire Christian and the introduction and the teaching and the learning, I found out that I had been following the teachings of Jesus my life without knowing it.
Mhm.
wow.
One
What were
statement,
your influences, Claire? Parents?
I really have to credit my dad for having a very humanitarian view of the world, to always put others first. And yet, as you know, he was the one who would not permit God's name in the house.
Claire, you might want to share your story, that story with Kitten, because I don't think she's heard it.
Basically what it was is that, both my parents grew up Jewish. My grandparents on my mother's side, my great grandparents were rabbis actually. And when my father went to World War II, he went as a German American going to fight against the Germans. So he was captured, he was in a prisoner of war camp, and things did not go well. So he came back, but he was convinced that he had survived despite God. And I grew up trying to convince him that he survived because of God.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
one thing that I found interesting, and this is going back to the fasting, is that the Jewish people, they say that their rabbis had said that a man will have to give an account on the judgment day for every good thing which he might have enjoyed and did not.
Did not do.
And so we talk about fasting, but it's also the belief that you should be enjoy that restaurant when you go out to eat, enjoy your life, enjoy all of the blessings that are here on earth too.
And just be grateful.
Yes, be grateful.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good place to end, guys. See you at church.